Bungie's newest expansion, The Edge of Fate, has been the subject of immense criticism. An article just dropped today. Destiny 2, The Edge of Fate's portal cannot sustain the game. This is from Paul Tassi. Let's see what we're cooking up in here. Logging into Destiny 2 during its second week, players were greeted with nothing. We are now in an era, for the first time in years, where there is not a week-to-week story unfolding in Destiny, which is something that we as players have requested for a long time because Bungie would weirdly time gate the story. And every week, sometimes it was nice, like you'd get a new reveal and it would kind of make the story interesting. Other times it felt a little forced. So I don't necessarily mind getting all the story at once, but it feels different, right? The cadence is odd, especially when we've been doing things a certain way for so long. In The Edge of Fate, you beat the campaign and that's it. Instead, you're herded into the main new draw of the game, the Portal. The Portal is a series of 4 ops sets of missions: Solo, Fireteam, Pinnacle, and Crucible. Everyone's spending their time in Pinnacle, it would seem, just grinding it out. Each have their own dedicated weapons and armor to farm, both now using the new tier system of the game, common tier 1 drops, and exceedingly rare tier 5 drops at the highest difficulty levels of the game. So you have to load into this activity if you don't know already. And as you grind it, you level up after every single clear. They made the system relatively frictionless, but it is a grind. So if you keep playing it over and over again, you will keep leveling up. And as you level up, you'll start getting higher tiered loot. Tier 1 drops are between like 100 and 200. Tier 2 drops from 200 to 300. Tier 3 drops from 300 to 400. And when you hit 400, you can start hitting those tier 4 drops consistently with a very small chance of tier 5 drops. Now you won't get the guaranteed tier 5 drops until Bungie increases the power gap, which will happen later on with the Ash and Iron update in just a few months from now. It's only been 2 weeks, but it's clear this is not going to be enough to sustain the game in a meaningful capacity, and it would be shocking if the game's active players did not start dropping left and right as they hit some sort of wall in the activity. Some may last longer than others, and some will no doubt be made to fix extremely obvious issues with the system. But the portal is not going away. This is the thing that's meant to keep players engaged now, which I think that's Bungie's strategy. It's not a strategy to get new players with the portal. It's more a strategy to make the game a little more streamlined and add a deeper grind for the existing Destiny 2 player base. The launch of this portal in The Edge of Fate is bizarre. There are 0 new activities in any of its ops lists. This is by far my biggest and strongest criticism, is that I actually like the new system. I think that adding the customizability is a good change. We just need some new stuff in here, right? We need Portal plus some new activities. And to be fair, they didn't just copy and paste the old activities, if we're actually going to criticize this statement for a moment. They did take the old activities and they kind of revamped them. So you'll notice that you're roaming around the salt mines and the Dread are there, right? The Dread are not normally in the salt mines activity. And there's also the mechanic of like the fire pillar from like Rolk is going on in there, and from the Final Shape as well. So, you know, there's some new mechanics and new enemies in old activities. So they've been revamped, right? They've been reimagined, but they are the old activities. I'm not going to classify through a string of enemies in a patrol zone new for solo ops. Fireteam Ops is years-old strikes and forgotten season activities. Pinnacle is only old exotic quests right now, though supposedly chunks of dungeons will be added later. That's in a few months from now. The way to mix this up to some extent is the new modifier system with different challenges and boons you can pick to earn better rewards. But it's mainly split into lower levels, trying to get an A rank, which usually just means locking your loadout and putting on an enemy challenge or 2, or higher levels, where you have to slap every negative modifier in the game on in order to get the best loot. Now, to be fair, you do have to slap every modifier on if you really want to chase the highest power grind. So you have to make the game as difficult as possible if you want to get the most desirable loot, right? So I think that it matches, right? Like the risk to reward is there if you think about it. Like, even though it may feel a little tedious at times where you're like, my radar's gone, my loadout's locked, my health doesn't regenerate, you know, all these crazy modifiers, like, that's, you know, making the game harder, I guess. I mean, radar one is a bit weird. I feel like we could probably do without that one, but in general, it is making the game harder. So that way, when you do get that maximum power, you'll know that you really had to grind for it. And anyone else that has it would also have grinded the same. and not even the best loot. Oh, interesting. At the high end, it's something like a 5% drop at any tier 5, much less a specific weapon or armor piece with perks or distribution you may want. Which is true. It's a very small chance for the tier 5 loot, which is my second biggest criticism of this, which is that Bungie implemented this whole new system, this tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system, but really the tier 5 is completely unattainable upon launch. So they kind of use that system as a selling point for the Edge of Fate, and you're like, all right, let's go, let's start grinding, let's get that tier 5 gear, let's get those tier 5 weapons, and then you're immediately met with this brick wall of like, oh yeah, but by the way, you don't actually get any of that. That's much later on when we unlock it. It's like, wait, what? Why is that time gated, right? The tier 5 stuff should not be time gated as badly as it is. Lower levels are blindingly easy. I'm not sure what's going on there, but some of these difficulties have bosses that cannot simply have more health than a mini boss at max, but at higher levels, getting more powerful actually hurts you, given that you will keep being forced into higher deltas, plus 30, plus 40, plus 50. Nothing you do can change that unless you scale things back for inescapably less loot, which, I mean, that is a good description of how it works, and I don't necessarily see something wrong with that. Like, as you're in the lower tiered activities, it should be easier because you're getting that playthrough, you're understanding the mechanics, you're figuring out what types of bosses and enemies there are, maybe you're figuring out what types of things shoot you, like maybe there's a lot more solar things shooting you, so you want solar resist on your chest, you know? You're getting these repeat clears so that way you can really understand the activity and handle it when you do get up to, you know, that plus 50 delta, right? When you do get up to that increased modifiers that just make the enemies basically one-shot you, and it takes so much more to kill them. So I don't necessarily hate that. I think that it should scale up like that, and the loot scales accordingly, so it seems like that's like working as intended in my mind. The split is that lower tier players are going to climb high enough where this just gets exhausting and leave. Higher tier players, all but a few crazies, my friends on my raid team, are going to burn out with this insane difficulty that's often not necessarily difficulty, but endless sponges and simple inability to ever feel truly strong. True, it's kind of an artificial difficulty, right? You're just kind of doing the same repetitive activity over and over again. It would be nice if Bungie made people or incentivized people to kind of rotate through more activities. As it stands right now, people just choose to just stick to the one because it's more optimized. There's some pretty obvious portal fixes that should be implemented as soon as possible. The ability to take a favorite weapon through tiers via a lot of investment, rather than it being impossible for most players to even see a tier 4 or 5. I agree. Better drop rates for higher tiers at higher levels. Also good opinion. At least any kind of chance to get a higher tier drop at lower levels, rather than making it wholly impossible. Agreed. Changing these high-end difficulty deltas so every player isn't going to be terminally underpowered, with that only getting worse as time goes on. We've got being vastly under-generous with loot and overly focused on challenge, with stupidly punishing tuning is a recipe to turn off players. Well, to be fair, if you do hit this sort of like brick wall where you can't level up any further, that's also a good indicator to just stop leveling at that point in time and maybe play some other stuff. Like you could just start grinding for some other weapons, start grinding other activities, you know, like it doesn't have to be necessarily all or nothing. Like you just need to get highest power or not. Like there's a certain point where you could just call it a cutoff point and just be like, yeah, this is too difficult, it's too frustrating, I'm not interested in this anymore. You know, maybe you're at 350 power or wherever that is for you. All of this seems to be in place to extend the grind as long as possible, but what's going to do is cause a lot of players rage or exhaustion quits. I'm already seeing it happen. The entire concept of the portal, replaying very old content, also is just not appealing at baseline for most players, and those that do say they like it, I will be curious if even they'll still be around a couple weeks from now. This is just not going to be able to carry Destiny 2 for 6-month gaps between major expansions without severe population crashes. And I agree with that, and that's why I'm hoping that Bungie's miniature events that they're bringing in, like Solstice is coming pretty soon, supposedly has some pretty good gear. Hopefully those things will spice it up. The idea is that, you know, throughout this 6-month period, we should constantly have a cycle of new things happening to keep things interesting enough and keep the population alive in the game. Because obviously the portal cannot be the entirety of what we're here to grind for. You know, we obviously have the new raid, and the portal needs to have new activities like the dungeons, or old activities like the dungeons added in, and the new raid added in, and things like that. It would be nice to have more replayability. It would be really cool as well if you could have the old raids with the new feats modifiers in the portal, so that way you could do like the Last Wish with contest mode on and level up through that. That would be awesome. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement for the portal. I do think that it's built on the backbone of a good idea, and I think that the system in the long run will be the right decision, but as it stands right now, it's ruffling some feathers, and a lot of people are criticizing it. But let me know what you think about the portal down in the comment section below.